friends and sane persons. I don't know if I'm recording. My name is Kyle, and it's time for another episode of Wednesday. Hello there, friends and sane persons. I hope this wasn't a double start here. It said it was live, and then it didn't look like it was. Anyway, my name's Kyle, and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Wednesday Whimsy is a short show I do every Wednesday evening where I talk about a board game top 10, some board game related topic, or something else that I feel like talking about at the time. So we're now in 2024 firmly, and I'm ready to start talking about great games. So I played a great game a couple of weeks ago for the first time, and I've played it a little bit since. And I played another great game even more recently than that. And they both had in common the subject of card drafting. And so I wanted to do a sort of a list of my top 10 drafting games, and then I'm going to talk about a couple games on this list separately in future episodes. So that's what you got today. We're going to talk about these games pretty quickly. I'll tell you what I like about them, and we'll see where we go from there. So let's go and start with my number 10. So when I say card drafting, and I did say card drafting, and most of these games are actually card drafting. One is not. But what I really mean is some sort of a group selection process where what you do takes something away from someone else's pool of opportunities. The most common type of card drafting is sort of the pick and pass method, where you'll have a hand of cards and you will select one or two or some number of them and then pass the rest on. And then, you'll get a hand of cards from someone else, and then you'll ultimately select one of those cards to keep, and you'll keep passing until, that all the cards have been distributed. And that is how my number 10 game works. It's very much just a pure drafting game. Probably, well, one of the only pure drafting games on my list. It is Ohanami. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. This is a game that I discovered randomly. I think I ordered it from Germany. I was buying some short, small drafting games, and I just happened upon it. Let me open here the. Nope, that's the settings. Let's open here the screen sharing so you can see a little bit of how the game looks. So here is Ohanami. What you're doing in this game, and kind of its interesting hook, is you're going to have a hand of, I think, 10 cards. You'll select two, you'll pass the rest on, and you'll keep doing so. And then once you've sort of selected and played all the cards, you're going to play both of the cards. And ultimately what you're doing is making sets. You have 3 gardens. And so you put down the first number. I think they go from 1 to 120 or something. So you put down a 72. Later on, you can play another card there behind it if it's lower than 72, and in front of it if it's higher than. The thing is, you just can't ever put anything in the middle. So you're trying to keep, your numbers as tight as possible. But also, things score differently. The first round of the game, and you play 3 rounds, only I think the green cards score, or the blue cards score your first time. I can't remember which it is. It looks like, looking at that score sheet, it looks like it's the blue cards the first time, then the blue and green, and then maybe the gray score the final round. I can't remember the order, but it's all written down there on the score sheet. And so, the green cards, or whatever you score first, is going to be more valuable long term, but the individual scorings of them are lower. And so you're trying to build up to a nice end game scoring, and then finally the pink cards, these lotus blossoms, I think is what they are only scored at the end of the game. Very simple, very fast. Am I not showing this? Well, that's terrible. It's like I've never done this before. There's the cover for you, Ohanami. Very easy drafting game, but really has some nice decisions that you're making. Very easy to get into. And my number 10. Let's go on to my number 9. All right, let's see if I can actually make this all work this time. My number 9 is the only game on here that doesn't involve the drafting of cards. And instead, you're drafting little wooden dinosaurs in Draftosaurus. So Draftosaurus is a super easy game. It's basically just drafting, kind of like Ohanami, but even more so. You're going to have a hand of, I think, 6 little wooden dinosaurs. And that's Ohanami. Where's Draftosaurus? Here it is. 6 little wooden dinosaurs and this little park that you're playing them into. And then so each turn someone's going to have this die that they roll, and you can they'll place a die. They'll place their dinosaur in their park however they want, and everyone else is going to place it based upon the roll of the die. And you're just sort of trying to make different sets. There's, these areas have silly names like the Forest of Sameness and the Plain of Differences. In the Forest of Sameness, you're trying to have all of one type of dinosaur, as many as possible, whereas different types or have the most of one particular type that you designate, have pairs or triplets. Little simple scoring opportunities. There's a flip side that has some other scoring opportunities, and there's a couple of expansions that add different kinds of dinosaurs. But what I like about this game is it is just fast and easy. You can buy a nice big kind of a cloth bag where you can literally keep the whole game. You can ditch the box if you wanted to. The dinosaurs are the right size that they're easy to handle and hold in your hand, but also, not so big or small that they're annoying. Rules are super easy. You can teach it to anyone in a matter of probably 2 minutes. You play 2 rounds of drafting, score up your points, and you're done. It's just that simple. Again, it's a pure drafting game. You're not drafting cards, but you might as well be, because these little dinosaur meeples are, they function as cards just with no information printed on them. There you see different versions of it with different colors than the one I have, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, that's my number 9. A great little drafting game, purely a drafting game, Draftosaurus. Let's go on now to my number 8. My number 8, I said. So my number 8, I mentioned at the beginning that it was a game I played in the last couple of weeks that I really took a shine to. It is a drafting game, again, fairly purely drafting game, although with a little engine building here. The game is called Moon. So this is from a series of games that contains a game called Villagers that I've talked about on another episode of Wednesday Whimsy, and also a game called Streets that I have not talked about but isn't really worth talking about. Moon, however, is the newest of the series and also the best. So what you're going to do every round is you just have this hand of cards, and what's interesting is you're going to divide up a number of cards based on the number of players, but there's also these expedition cards that go in, and those are kind of chosen at random. And those give whoever has that hand a special ability that they can use that turn. So you take the cards, you either play one by paying its cost and putting it into play, or you can, I don't know if it's called harvest or something. You can do something to it. Assimilate, that's what it's called, to throw it away instead of putting it into play and get the resources that are indicated on it. And you're just going to keep going, and you're ultimately building your own engine. These blue cards over here on the left, those are going to be resources that you get in resource production, both immediately and at the start of the remaining rounds of the game. These yellow ones are normally going to be flags that are kind of prerequisites for things. And then also at the end of the round, you're going to score majority bonuses for whoever has the most flags. There are these pink ones, which are once per round abilities. That it's a wide variety of them. And then there's the gray ones that are largely going to be endgame scoring bonuses, although they could be other things as well. Like this one gives you it encourages you to produce plants because that gets you points at the end of each round. The rules are not hard, but what's kind of fun about this is there's also this rover element. You're going to have these rover meeples that you can send out on your turn to someone else's area. So like if you needed a water, you could put a rover out on somebody else's card. You can only send them to someone else. You can't give them to yourself. And that would give you the immediate benefit, or you could put it here and take, for example, this flag for that turn to help you play something. But at the end of the round, the person who owns the rovers is going to, or who owns the cards that they're on, is going to get them all into their own supply. So they'll have more flexibility next turn, and rovers break ties. Very simple, well implemented, small game, but it really feels very satisfying. And I was it's my favorite of the 3, and I also really liked Villagers. So I guess that's saying something. Again, Streets you can forget about. But that's my number 8, the drafting game, Moon. So let's go on now to my number 7. Now, once we get in, I started speaking while that was playing, and I should know not to do that. Now that we're in number 7, the rest of these games, well, I guess the next one not so much, but most of the rest of these games are going to be games that have a strong drafting element, but maybe something more that aren't really as pure drafting games as these can be. The next one I'm going to talk about, my number 7, is a game that I've talked about on Wednesday Whimsy before, I believe, and that is Mille Fiori. So Mille Fiori is it's a Reiner Knizia game where, let me put this up. What you're trying to do is there's these sort of little mini games out on this board, and you're trying to put your tokens down in these areas to score different things. And every area scores differently. In this top area, you want connected groups of your own stuff. In this kind of score track looking thing on this purple area, you want yours to be in as long chains as possible. On these green areas, you want to sort of build things in a pyramid shape and be higher up. A variety of different things you're doing, but the way you do it is by drafting cards. So you're going to have some cards, you're going to select what you want to use and then pass it. And then there's sort of this interesting turn order in which it's played. And that's kind of how it works. It's really a fairly straightforward game, but a really surprisingly delightful one. Came out a couple years ago. There was an expansion as well that really hasn't become widely available yet. I'm going to have to look into trying to chase down a copy of it because I really enjoy Mille Fiori. And while you are doing sort of this board placement, it is all run by an engine of drafting cards, so it's definitely a drafting game. My number 7, Mille Fiori. Next up, my number 6. So my number 6 here is the newest game on the list. This is a game that I discovered very recently. I mean, like in the last week. But I have since played it so many times, and I can hardly think. I mean, I just want to go play it again because it is such a delightful little game. I believe it's not really been widely available in the U.S. Let me put it up here. Sorry. Where is the picture? Here you go. My number 6 is Far Away. So Far Away is a small box with a really big game in it, even though it's a small game as well. What you've got is this. You start the game with 5 cards. You select 3 you're going to keep, and every round you're going to choose 1 card and play it, and then you'll draft sort of from this common market the new cards you go. And the order in which you'll be doing that is going to be based upon the cards you played that round. And ultimately, what you're trying to do is create these combos. And so the cards are going to be played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then they will be flipped all face down, and you'll score them in reverse order based only upon what's visible. So, for example, this card here is going to score. In order to score, it looks like it needs a rock and a pineapple to be already visible in cards that have already been face up. So I can see here's a rock and a pineapple, so this will score. And it's going to score 2 points for every yellow and blue card that's face up. So that's 1 here for this one, 1 for this one. These 2 would not be face up yet, so they wouldn't score, and then these ones are always face up. So it'd be scoring 6 points here, but would not be scoring the 7, 8, 9, 10, just because you're resolving these in sort of reverse order. Delightful little twist on the way that these things work. I was so impressed by this game. I really can't wait to play it again. If I had played it in 2023, it would have been on my tops of the list of the year probably. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be on the cruise, I believe, so be able to play it there, hopefully. Anyway, that is a delightful little drafting game, Far Away. And I just checked. It looks like it's coming at some point in March to the U.S. So that is my number 6, Far Away. My number 5 is, we'll talk about it after the number 5. My number 5 is the biggest, The biggest game on this list, it's a game with large miniatures, a game with lots of action that's not drafting, but again, the core sort of engine running it is a card drafting system. And it's a traditional pick and pass drafting system. That game is Blood Rage. So in Blood Rage, yes, there's this sort of mythical Viking theme to it, and these large minis. Hold on, let me open this. These large minis that are sort of over the top. There's sort of this building up your clan of characters. There's a lot of that there. But what you're doing is you're going to start each round with a draft. And there's 3 rounds of the game. And so you're going to be drafting 3 times. And you're going to take like the cards, you're going to select a card and pass the rest on. And then, you're sort of creating the actions you're going to be performing that round through this drafting system. And then you're going to go around in turn order and do various actions, many of which involve playing cards, but not always. You're sort of spending this rage currency that you're trying to preserve and make last as long as possible. And you're going to use those cards for, special abilities. You'll use them for battle. You'll use them for upgrades. There's a lot of things you can do with them. There's also end of round scoring quests as well that you can lock in. And a good portion of the game, I mean, more than half of the game, half of the decisions you make come from the cards that you get and knowing what cards are available and sort of picking the right time to take them out and make them yours, or to prevent someone else from getting them, because there is a use for every card, even if it's not playing directly into your strategy. It's all about that draft. Yes, there's sort of the uncertainty of combat and the management of your action points and things like that, but it's the draft that is really the core of the game, and so it definitely fits onto this list for me. My number 5, Blood Rage. My number 4 is a small drafting game, and it's probably the smallest drafting game on this list. Again, this one is more pure drafting, I guess. I lied when I said that the rest would be part of something else. Um, this is Tides of Madness. So Tides of Madness, or it has another game that's really the same called Tides of Time. This is from Portal, Polish publisher Portal Games. And this game is all about drafting, but it's a 2-player drafting game. And 2 players is hard to do with drafting just because you kind of pass the cards back and forth each round. But the way that it works is you're going to be sort of playing the cards, and they have different abilities and scorings they do. The cards sort of ratio of art to actual functional text is a little skewed. I love the art, but this is really all that matters, this sort of top part of the card. So like, this card here, for example, at the end, you're going to be scoring for a set of all 5 colors. And so you're going to, you keep it, and you'll see that this one gives you the yellow swirly color. And so you're trying to sort of make things that will score for the round. And then kind of the hook is at the end of the round, you're going to choose a card that sticks around with you. And so as you progress through the rounds of the game, you'll sort of have some pre-played cards that can help fuel future turns. Now, the game also comes with this madness mechanism where when you play certain cards, these tentacle cards, you get madness tokens. And when you reach a certain threshold, you just lose. And so there's sort of this push your luck aspect, because they tend to be on fairly good cards. And you can keep them around. But if you have too much madness, you're going to lose. And so you're also trying to push your opponent to take a little bit more than you do. And it can kind of influence, you can get a little bit of control from it. That's all that's really different from Tides of Time. Everything else is the same. It's just Tides of Time doesn't have that madness. And I prefer the madness mechanism, but I could also play without it. And which one you like, whether you like the theme or the artwork of this one or the other, they're essentially the same game, but they're a great drafting game for 2 players. My number 4, Tides of Madness. Let's go on to the top 3. The next game is a game that I guess I've kind of noticed that people have opinions about this one and they compare it with another game. And for me, this one wins out. Why can't I find it? Here it is. The game is called The Isle of Cats. So in this game, it's partially a polyomino game. I mean, that's a good portion of it is placing these pieces on a ship. But the beginning of every round is going to be drafting cards, and you're literally just going to be drafting cards, and then you have to pay for the cards that you decide to keep. So you might take a card just because you don't want someone else to have it and throw it away, but you've kind of wasted an opportunity there. And these cards are going to they're going to be the tools you need to take the cats. They're going to give you additional income. They're going to be end game scoring. There's a lot of different things they can do for you. And so you're really using this drafting mechanism, and then you're going to go out in turn order and take these cat tiles and put them on your board, trying to fill in as many empty spaces as possible. And that's kind of the way the game works. But the drafting element of it, the drafting aspect, is such a core piece. Hold on, I need to have a little throat clear. Excuse me. The drafting element is such an integral part of the system. You've got this huge deck of cards, and there's all these other decks you can mix in, these expansion decks. Just a lot of fun with drafting, and then also with this tile placement. It's very well measured or married together. Now, the game that it's often compared with is Bunny Kingdom, which I enjoyed the gameplay of, but the scoring of it was kind of annoying because of the way that you kind of put things out on this map, and it's difficult to kind of see what you have access to. And so the scoring, I felt, really dragged that game down. Whereas this game I found was a lot easier and tighter with the scoring, even though it uses, very similar kind of ideas. My number 3, The Isle of Cats. Let's go on now to my number 2. My number 2, I guess we can already see it being typed there, so I'm not going to make any bones about it, is Hadara. So Hadara is another very much drafting-focused game, and this is a different edition than the one I have. But the way the drafting works in Hadara is really interesting because you kind of have 2 rounds of drafting. So you're going to draft, do some scoring, draft, do some scoring, and then you'll go into the second sort of deck of cards. And so the first round, there's this little wheel here in the center, and that kind of describes who is taking from which pile each round. So you're going to go around and take cards from each colored pile, and you're going to choose one to throw away out of the game, and then one to either play or cash in for money. And sort of to make it interesting, every time the cards cost money, but each successive card you play of a certain color is going to be cheaper. So you get a discount for having, for building, like, if it's your 6th red card, you've got, I think, a 6 coin discount. So it makes, expensive cards easier to play if you've played them in succession. The game also encourages you, though, to diversify if possible and to specialize, because there's these medals you can sort of lock in to score bonus points for different things. A really interesting game. But anyway, after you go through and you do that, I said throw away out of the game. I was lying. After you do that initial draft where you keep one card and discard one, you're going to discard it to this face-up discard pile. And then in sort of turn order, you're going to go around and buy a card from the tops of these discard piles or throw it away for money. And so you kind of have an interesting second chance at things. If, for example, you didn't have enough money, but you didn't want to throw it away, you really wanted that card, well, maybe you'll be able to put it in a pile in such a way that you're able to get to it. Really a fascinating game. There's other things going on. There's bonuses that you can unlock and things like that. But it's very much a drafting game at its core, but it does so in a way that I really haven't seen before. And it's if you haven't tried this one, absolutely worth your time. My number 2, Hadara. And so let's move down now to the top of the list. So if you know me or have looked at my other videos, my favorite drafting game probably won't be a surprise. So this is the 2-player version of another drafting game. That other drafting game is Seven Wonders, and my favorite drafting game is the 2-player version, Seven Wonders Duel. So Seven Wonders Duel has a really interesting draft. It's a very tense, tight 2-player game with a lot of different things going on. What you're going to have is this pyramid of cards, and on your turn, you can take any of the uncovered face-up cards, and you can either play it for sort of to add it to your tableau, or you can throw it away for money, which you need to buy future cards, or a few times during the game, if you have the right resources, you can activate one of your wonders with it. There are a couple of expansions that add additional things. For example, there are these senator cards, which allow you to kind of take control of these chambers of the Senate that give you access to bonuses and another way to win. There's these gods that really mean that you have to look up and interpret symbols the whole time. I really wish they were printed with text. But ultimately, kind of the hook of the game is that there's 3 main ways to win. You can just sort of last till the end of 3 rounds. If you do, whoever has the most points wins. However, you can keep pressure up by, if you get, I think 5 of the 6 different symbols, or maybe it's 6 of the 7, then you can trigger an automatic victory. And the other way is there's this tug of war track where when you take these red cards, it's going to move this token toward yourself or toward your opponent. And if it gets all the way to the end, the opponent just loses. So there's kind of this push and pull mechanism where, if you might not want to do those red cards, for example, you might not care about it. You might want to be going for the end game, but occasionally you have to take them, because if you don't, your opponent will get them and they'll win. Same with these green cards. They really make the turn order important, because sort of being able to time it so that you can make sure you get a card or make sure your opponent doesn't get a card can be really interesting, and keeping track of it all can be a little bit, mindy, heady. But it's really a fascinating game. It's one of the tightest, sort of most fun games that you can have in such a short time. And I'm really a fan of Seven Wonders Duel. Well, there we have it. I have gone on too long about drafting games, but that's because I enjoy them. So I guess I'll end it here. That's kind of my thoughts on it. I hope you'll enjoy some of these games. Maybe try one, try more. You never know till you try them. Always try before you buy. But these are games that many of them are good travel games, and even if they're not, they're fun games that I think you'll enjoy. That drafting mechanism is intuitively enjoyable, just because you have decisions that normally can affect other people. It sort of adds some interaction to a game that might not otherwise have it. And it's kind of fun to sort of set yourself up and make your plans. There are lots of other good drafting games. And there are lots of other games that include drafting invariants, like Terraforming Mars. Many people like to play with, where you're going to draft sort of your starting hand of cards. That can be enjoyable. It can allow you to feel like you have a little bit more control. It can also add additional time, so be careful of that. Anytime you're passing a bunch of new information to people for them to process, it can just sort of, by its very nature, make it take a little bit longer. So you do have to be careful. But there you have it. I will be back here next week. I'm going to be pre-recording next week because I'm going to be on the Dice Tower Cruise. Very excited for that. Next week, I believe I'm talking about the game Moon. So we'll try and get that posted while we're out on the high seas. But, enjoy that. I talked about it a little bit today, but you'll hear my in-depth thoughts next week. And until then, I'm going to wish you, and myself, safe travels, courage when you need it, and I'll hope to see you back next time for another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Bye-bye.